There's another myth, as we're going down the list, that younger women actually are more valuable at work. Do you think it's a myth or a reality?
I'd like for you to give more context. And when you say more valuable.
Yeah. So, for example, actually, I can answer the question, right? And we can discuss it. We can discuss it. So, I mean, I've heard about this where younger women are more valuable at work. They get hired easier, right? And I think companies do that as a selfish thing because unfortunately, if you're just fresh out of school or this is your first or second job, you would be paid less, right? For more work. So to them, that's valuable because they are saving and giving you more work. And your experience level to know yourself, like we just mentioned, is limited. So to the employer, selfishly, that's a value proposition, right? But it's something that we need to, as leaders, as women, explain to other women that your value is not really tied to your age. But you find organizations doing that a lot of times.
Of course, there are organizations that do that. And it brings me back to something you said, I don't know what, probably in the last question. And it's a reflection of the organization. So that kind of organization is simply thinking about the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's all about the cost savings in terms of the salary and benefits of the employee. That's it. You know, and basically how this younger person can be manipulated to do more work and say, yes, sir, thank you, sir, thank you, sir.
Yes.
So for me, even that organization, I wouldn't even have much respect for such an organization, because what it means is that even their vision of where they want to be placed as an organization is limited, because they're ready to take someone who is fresh out of school, ready to accept whatever salary is offered, and will be made to work probably insane hours. But then they've discountenanced the value that a mid-level career person can add in terms of networks, in terms of exposure, in terms of access to information in whatever industry. Those things don't matter. And so when you have an organizational culture, so as far as they're concerned, the network and access can come from only the top. And then you just have foot soldiers. There's even a limit to the sustainability of such an organization.
Absolutely.
That's my mindset, because you need to have a culture pervading the entire organization, where from mid-level, top level, even at lower levels, people are consistently building their networks and have access to information in the industry that is broad-based. So if such an organization is reliant on the information that's coming from the top and then their foot soldiers, a lot of times they may be blindsided when certain things occur in their industry. Because we know human nature. In any organization, some of the valuable information that you get comes not from the top. By the time the information is coming to you at the top, it's almost end game. And so you need empowered employees across board. So if you're just restricting yourself to the fresh rookies, then you're limiting your organization's success. And frankly, I think even the mid-level career person is better off looking for opportunities in other places.
Yeah, I actually have a personal experience with this. It was right after I finished my master's, before I decided to go for a PhD. I came back to Nigeria and I was looking for a job. And there was this telco that just started, right? It was a big bank in Nigeria. They now diversified. They were now doing telecommunications, and they had an office. And they were. I actually went into the office to get a Wi-Fi modem or something, and
Mm.
the whole place was young ladies looking very, smart. And I was like, wow, this looks like the kind of place I would like to work, right? So I found out that I knew someone who worked there, and I asked them, and they said, oh, I should send my CV in, and I should come in and see the manager. So I mean, there were red flags from the beginning, right? When I came in and saw the manager, he didn't even look at my resume, right? I'm
Mm.
thinking, okay, I have this technology background. You're a telecommunications company. Like I can do a lot of system work and hardware
Yes.
work. He didn't ask me any of those things, right? And first we just finished that. Okay, yes, I think we have a space for you. However, we have this policy that even after I vet, uh, it was in Abuja here. They just opened the office. Even after my okay, you have to go
Mhm.
to Lagos and
To be
see
seen.
by the CEO. And
Oh,
in my
wow.
mind, it was like, first of all, the company that owns the bank or whoever that owns that telco has branches all over Nigeria. I think in other African countries as well. And it was this big person, and I thought was, so why would he have time
Time.
to talk to someone like me who was looking for an entry level job? Like, why was that necessary? you know? And he said, oh, yeah, it's part of the requirement. All these girls you're seeing here, they have to go to Lagos to interview for the role. Yes, you have the job, but he has to also okay. In my mind, I was like, so he has to okay every single person. Or is it a female thing or
in
every?
in in such a vast organization.
Yes, so he has that kind of time. And instantly, I just thought, oh, I'm not working here.
Yeah.
Like it has this place has nothing to offer me, because if you are going to be my direct line manager and you've seen my capabilities and you're more focused on someone liking me personally, then that means I really, and to this day, like I actually hate that network. Like I never even bought a SIM card from them. I never opened an account in that bank. I just left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, what? So,
No.
so you see, they were tapping based on this young female graduates, vulnerability, the eagerness. They had this very posh looking office. Like they were selling a dream to young ladies who, if you're not really aware of your self worth and your
Yes.
capacity as an individual, and a lot of it also has to do with even the family you come from. If you were not instilled the right values of who you are as a person, right? It's all after the job. All you need is job, 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 right? You can fall into a lot of traps, and that is where that whole statement of younger women are more valuable at work, because they can, like you said, easily be manipulated into believing certain
Exactly.
things are criteria, and it's okay because everyone has done
Yeah.
it.
And they don't have the benefit of, like you said, the years of experience
Mm,
to have certain set down no-go areas.
mm,
So it's actually like it's actually all about vulnerability and manipulation.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
mhm. So the last thing I want us to discuss in terms of myths about women is that women are too emotional in the workplace. That's very broad. Um, I know it's insulting in so many ways. So why do you think people use that as a dab towards women, and why is it a thing? Why don't we? Because men act out as well at work. I've seen men fight and do things that are seemingly irrational, but nobody calls them emotional.
It's still down to where we started with it, which
Mm,
is about those biases and perceptions. That's all it is,
mm,
which is why, tracking back to that example about two career people who were blinded in terms of their identity, one being male and one being female, and people are confronted with their achievements, their ambitions, their roles, and accepted the male better than
mm,
the female. It's still all about perceptions.
mm,
So where a male will go into a rant at work about something that he found unacceptable, it would be that he's strong-minded, he's strong-willed, he's not ready to take rubbish. But for a woman, is madam, cool down now. It's not like, it's not that serious. Calm down. How many times do you remember a male colleague being told to calm down? Even the choice of words.
Yeah.
Even the choice of words, it's condescending. It means you've lost track of you've lost your grip on your emotions. And you need to be soothed like a baby to calm down. But for if that rant comes from the male, people tend to go to the object of the rant and say, no, apologize.
Yeah.
So even in the way we respond to, I don't even want to say emotional outbursts, or I would say reactions in the workplace. The way we even respond sometimes perpetuates this myths about emotional outbursts in women vis-a-vis reactions in men.
Yeah. The application of emotional intelligence when reacting to certain things at work, right? And it's a very dicey. I don't know if it's something that I see a lot, right? And I don't know who really perpetuates it. Is it us, the women, or men, or it's society?
I think it's society, because all of us are raised in this society where women are seen to be emotional. Small thing, they will start crying. Whereas I have never seen a woman cry at work.
Yes.
At least in my recent memory.
I remember having a boss who told me, if you need to cry, and she was, which is why also I think in the beginning of this call, I was telling you that I've had amazing female bosses. I don't know why people say it's hard to have female bosses. I remember having a boss who we had a very tough task, and she sat me down. She said, this is tough, and I know it's stressful, but don't let them see that it's stressing you. If you need to cry, go to the bathroom, cry, clean up your face. It's fine. It's okay to cry, but don't let them see it.
I think emotional intelligence, while it's very important for both genders, right? But I think it's especially important for women, because you have so much that you need to confront on a daily basis. And so the more you're able to come to grips with yourself in terms of those things that are your motivations, those things that can set you off, then you're in a better position. Because whether we like it or not, we're in a constant battle with these misconceptions.
Yeah,
so
and
even
also,
go ahead. Even if your personal mindset is, everybody is the same in the workplace, in my mindset, but the fact is that's not the lived reality.
It isn't.
People see you differently, no matter how you do, no matter how you think. Because of how society has ingrained this kind of thinking, a lot of people grow up with that mindset. A lot of people, even through their education and through their careers, have had these mindsets perpetuated. So it's not something that's going to switch off like this. But the more emotionally resilient we are, the more emotionally aware of who we are as people, our motivations, our principles, our values, and being aware of our environment in terms of our colleagues, the organization in which we're working, the better for us.
Yeah. And it speaks to,
because that boss that said to you, I know this is very stressful, if you need to go, have yourself a good cry. She seems to me like a very emotionally intelligent person, because she knows that the work at that time is immensely stressful and you may break down, but she also knows the implications of having that public breakdown. Which will be, for the longest time, you'll be trying to, remove that perception. But she's accepting of it. So we have to come to a place where we accept that emotions are perfectly natural for any gender.
Yes. And we need to also be very, this is where vulnerability, grace, compassion comes in the workplace in general, regardless of the gender, recognizing that as human beings we go through things, right? And we cannot remove some of the things that we have coming into the work environment, right? Because
Mm.
like during our parents' time, you go to work and you're supposed to be extremely professional. But now with the mental health awareness and things like that, people know that, I mean, it's okay for me to say I'm not okay today,
Yeah.
right? And my work needs to be a bit compassionate and understanding that me not being okay today does not mean I'm going to slack in my performance, but it just means I need grace. For example, you have women who just had kids and they come back to work after 3 months or after 6 months. It could be dealing with postpartum depression or other things, right? But they still have their intellect and whatever it is they were doing before they left work. So having a good leader in that kind of situation recognizes that this person might need a little bit more time to get back to their full self
Mm-hmm.
without you using that to penalize them and say, "Oh, why are you being why are you crying? Why are you being too emotional?" Right? They might be going through something, but it's a phase. It will end, right?
Yes.
Giving that grace to that person rather than adding to that person's turmoil. Because now you see, I mean, with the Olympics, you're seeing people like Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles pulling out of a sport that would give them worldwide notoriety simply because they want to preserve their mental health.
And for the last 4 years, sports that they have consistently worked towards, that has been their goal for the last 4 years,
Yeah.
working towards this Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
But recognizing the fact that I'm not mentally, I'm not in the right space.
Yeah.
Because what it would have taken for them to pull out is so immense. When you think of the fact that every waking moment for them for the past 4 years has been directed at that moment, and to have to, on their own, say, you know what, I cannot go through. And then you see people insulting them. Really? I
But
don't
it
think.
gives me hope, right? It gives me
Yeah.
hope that even the Olympics is able to accept that. Because I believe that maybe in the past they would have said, "Oh, okay, you're completely disqualified. Like, why are you quitting? Or you're banned from the next Olympics." But I'm seeing changes now. Like even with organizations, you're having people put policies around mental health awareness or mental health trainings or therapy free for employees. I'm seeing that this generation is forcing a change in the narrative that we are not robots as human beings, male or female. You need to recognize our emotions are valid. Don't use our emotions against us. Our emotions are separate from our intellectual capacity, from our physical capacity, but they are also an entity that contributes to our whole self. So I know in Africa we have a long way to go because you'll be thinking, oh, why they lost your family is depending on you. There's so much money you could have made. You're like, why would you do this? You know? So it's and or like with Serena Williams, who completely pulled out of the Olympics and said, I've done it before. I need to be here for my family, right? I have a young daughter. I need to be here. I choose not to participate this year. And the freedom that women are having to speak up for themselves and their emotions and not allow those emotions be weaponized against them.
Yes. I think it also helps to have, which is where we're speaking about having role models, having people examples. And so for Naomi to do it definitely weighed in on Simone doing it.
Yes.
So you have Serena and then Naomi, and then so it always helps, and that's why I say no one's voice is less than anyone else's. Somebody would look at you, Dr. Norato, and say, because she did this, I'm going to have the boldness. I've wanted to do it forever, but I was always fearful about how it would be taken and how it would be perceived. But seeing you do it and own it confidently will help another person. And so mentorship isn't always about direct one-on-one relationship. Sometimes it's about speaking your own truth and communicating that truth widely. because you never really know who's going to take away from it and own their own truth by virtue of the fact that you spoke out yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the perfect way for us, I think, to put a pin on the whole barriers to success for women conversation. I feel like we can go on and on. Like, this is a topic I like to talk about because
Yes.
there's so much, right? But I think, to me, what I can take away from what we've talked about is there were a lot of barriers. There are lesser now because women are beginning to own their strength, right? Those things that were used against us as weaknesses, we're able to take our power back and say, no, this does not define me as a woman, as a professional, or as a mother, or as a wife, or, as a leader in general. And I am hopeful that the more these conversations are happening, and we also have to recognize that a lot of us are blessed to have supportive male figures, whether they're bosses, husbands, fathers, brothers, that are also helping change the narrative by recognizing that we are the sum total of our being, and it's not really tied to certain attributes that we bring forth to the table. At the end of the day, what you can do is okay. It's not okay that you don't have to be perfect, as long as you can be yourself, your authentic self, and you can stand in your own truth as your authentic self and own your work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic summary.
Yeah. So as we're summarizing the discussion, tell me more about your foundation and what it is that you do, and where we can find it, how we can possibly collaborate, all those things.
So it was I think it was in the third or fourth year of my residency in family medicine. I was confronted with so many patients who couldn't afford good health care, patients who there was so much that could be done for them, but because of the finances, there was that block in terms of, the healthcare they could receive. And so I decided to start the foundation so that I could collaborate with colleagues into providing free medical services, get support, sponsorships, and collaborations from other organizations to fund the healthcare of people in a lot of the underserved communities, a lot of people who couldn't afford quality healthcare. And so the foundation is more of one of collaborations. And so we work with other indigenous foundations for initially just healthcare services. But then we started, of course, from providing healthcare services, you would see that education for children in some of those families was an issue. And so we started partnering with NGOs that are working in education to provide educational services such as renovation of some of the community schools, providing seats, back to school materials, uniform, literacy. We get support from other organizations and donate books to some of these schools. And then we also started, which is the most recent add to the foundation, which is economic empowerment, education, training for women in skills that they can monetize and build their independence, their financial independence. Because for a lot of, and all these are linked, because for a lot of families, that lack of financial independence is a reason why health-seeking behavior and doing the right thing when they're ill is suboptimal. Because the first consideration is, how do I pay for this? So while we join in advocacy for universal health coverage so that a large majority of the population have access to basic quality healthcare, we're still mindful of the fact that for as long as key players in families are unempowered. They have barely any skills that can translate to financial earning. That in itself is a huge barrier to accessing health in terms of their awareness, their independence, education. And so we also veered into that. But all our programs and activities are in collaboration with other indigenous nonprofit organizations, so that, because we are mindful of an increased scope and increased strength when we work with others. And so that's something we tend to prioritize at the Kibeya Care Foundation. So we're on Instagram, and we have our contact details there for contacts in terms of programs and activities that we could collaborate on. So we're a growing organization, and so there's also a limit to the number of programs and activities we have in a year, but we try to collaborate with as many indigenous organizations as we can, also so that we strengthen our indigenous NGO capabilities in country.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'll put the links to all the places where you can find the foundation in the show notes, and anyone can reach out to you, whether it's through there or LinkedIn. And do you have any final advice for women, men regarding today's conversation?
There's an Igbo saying that whenever you wake, that is your morning. And so I know that for a lot of us, we grew up in a society where women were perceived in a certain way, and anything outside that perception is seen as an aberration. But if we think back historically, think about historical Nigeria, there's strong, powerful women in our country's history that shows us that we have, by virtue of our colonial and post-colonial experience, limited the power and strength of the Nigerian woman. And so my last words here would be that let's track back to the historical Nigerian woman, and acknowledge and accept the fact that we are a people of power, both men and women. And so in whatever space we find ourselves, we should work to encourage the ownership of our strength, ownership of our values, and ownership of what we can contribute to our organizations, our communities, and society. So wherever you are and you witness some of these myths that seem to want to continue to be perpetuated to limit any subset of society, do what you can to debunk it there and then. Even in how you portray yourself, even in how you lead, both yourself and others, so that we start building a transgenerational culture where people are confident in themselves, regardless of their gender. The worst thing anyone can do is limit themselves, even before others limit you. And so we all have a role to play in preventing people from limiting themselves. I'll just end on that note.
Perfectly well said. And thank you so much, Dr. Adaeze, for joining me on the Career Gems podcast. And thank you for all those gems of wisdom that you dropped on your experiences. And thank you for continuing to contribute to the fight against, the spread of this deadly virus that's, here. And hopefully it would leave us soon. I mean,
Hopefully.
yeah. And thank you all for listening to us. You can find the Career Gems podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Until next time, thank you very much, and bye bye.